Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. We are back again with more King Arthur Knight's Tale, and this time I want to go over the abilities for Lady Guinevere. She's a very popular character and someone who is very powerful in the game, so I know many of you would be interested in this content. Let's go ahead and dive right in. So the first skill that she gets is Strike, which is going to do 100% weapon damage to an adjacent enemy. For upgrade, she has an additional 15% weapon damage, which I definitely feel like you should take. She can make it so that the strike will cause chill, which makes the enemy have 33% less AP. Whether or not this is worth it to you depends upon your playstyle with Lady Guinevere. Me personally, I teleport to weak enemies like archers who I know I'm going to be able to kill on the same turn that I go to them. And therefore, this upgrade doesn't help me very much. If you prefer to use Lady Guinevere in a different way, where maybe she's going up against enemies that are going to actually be able to survive her attacks, then taking Chilling Touch might make sense. You also have the upgrade where she's going to do increased weapon damage against frozen units. Definitely recommend that you take this. And finally, she can regain 2 HP when using Strike. Regaining HP is absolutely fantastic. Basically, armor and hit points together is what is going to protect your vitality. So I definitely recommend that you go ahead and pick this up. Next up is Freezing Attack. You're going to do 100% weapon damage to an adjacent enemy and freeze them for 1 turn. Freezing causes 100% less AP for the entire duration. So essentially the enemy could skip a turn. Now, even though I usually want to kill an enemy on the same turn, because freezing is going to increase the amount of damage I do with Strike, I go ahead and get this. And on top of that, even if for whatever reason they do survive my attacks because they're frozen, I know next turn they're not going to be able to turn serious damage against Lady Guinevere. So all of that together means this is definitely worth it. As far as upgrade, you can make it where Freezing Attack gains 50% armor breaking. It will do 20% vulnerability on that particular target. The cooldown can be reduced by 1. And you can chill the target for 2 more turns after the freeze effect. Obviously, I didn't pick this up for the same reason I didn't get Chilling Touch on Strike. Next up is Bless, which is going to give 1 ally an additional 30% melee weapon damage for 1 turn. You can upgrade this where it'll also give 10% increase in melee weapon damage to all the other allies, an increase of 1 AP to the specific target of Bless, and you can increase the duration of Bless by 1 turn. And then finally, you also have the ability to grant plus 20 mental debuff resist. I don't think the plus 20 mental debuff resist is worth it. I think I've mentioned in one of the ability videos before that you need at least around 40% in order for it to really do something. So I chose not to pick this up, but I do believe Bless and its upgrades are well worth it as long as you're in a party where melee damage is important. Now, for my personal party, I have Sir Mordred, who is a tank. I have Guinevere, but then I also always have a champion. So because there are 3 characters on my team, if you also count Lady Guinevere, who are doing melee damage, Bless becomes worth it. If you have a team that's made up more so of ranged characters, then this isn't worth it as much. So you have to make your own decision based upon the makeup of your team. Aura of Protection is going to give plus 2 Unbreakable Armor to Lady Guinevere and all adjacent allies. Me personally, this isn't worth it because, again, I'm usually using Teleport to get to those hard to reach enemies like the archers or the spellcasters who try to stay out of the way and use that to be able to take them out quickly. Therefore, she's rarely adjacent to other allies, and therefore there aren't many times when this is really going to be useful for me. But as an upgrade, you can increase the extension of the aura by 2 tiles. You can cause it to give allies a plus 10% mental debuff resist and a 10% physical debuff resist. And you can also reduce incoming range damage by 3. So if you're using Guinevere in a different way where she's closer to the team, then obviously this is very, very useful. But otherwise, I would say that it's not worth it and you can skip it. All resistance is going to increase the mental and physical resistance by 10%. I don't feel like this is worth it because, again, usually she's kind of out of the way, off to the side anyway. So she's not really the target of those types of attacks. Long Reach is going to increase the range of her spell skills by 1 tile, and it increases her spellcraft by 1. So spellcraft allows you to detect objects that are hidden by magic, like pouches of gold and chests, and it also allows you to identify shrines, which is important because some shrines have negative effects that you won't know unless you have properly identified them. So it's important to have at least one person on your team who is skilled in spellcraft. And then finally, Favored, the first support spell cast during an encounter costs no AP. So support spells are like Bless, and later on we'll talk about Inspire, things of that nature. She uses them on a regular basis, so I would definitely say that this is well worth picking up. Next up is Inspire, which is going to allow Lady Guinevere and her allies to gain +2 AP for 1 turn. Now you lose an AP because this costs 3 AP to begin with, but otherwise the rest of your team is going to gain 2 AP, and I definitely feel like this is worth it. As far as upgrade, you can get it where it removes chill, freeze, slow, and stun from the impacted units, which is a monster upgrade. There are definitely enemies that love to put on those types of effects. You can reduce the cooldown of Inspire, give your allies +1 movement AP, and it can also reduce the hero and allies cooldowns by 1 turn. Inspire's cooldown is increased by 1 turn if you do this, though. I definitely think these 2 upgrades are worth it. Mobilization, that +1 movement AP, I don't think it's worth her spending a skill point in order to get this. Tranquility is really nice, though. Of course, you would have to increase the cooldown for Inspire by 1 turn, which means you would only be able to use it once every 4 turns. But being able to reduce the cooldowns for all of the hero's abilities, so if you pop this off maybe on the 2nd or 3rd round when everybody's burned through all of their really good skills, this could be a really nice strategic way to get people back into the fight much earlier. So definitely something worth considering to use. Next up is Globe of Protection, which is going to grant 28 temporary HP for 2 turns. As far as upgrades, you could set it up where it's going to increase your mental and physical debuff resist by 20%. It's going to remove all negative effects from the hero. It's going to give you a +3 armor, and you can do it where you will reduce the AP cost by 1 so that it only costs 2 AP to activate. This could definitely be worth it. I personally don't use it because usually things are not that bad for Lady Guinevere, but even in my playstyle, because I'm off to the side, that also means I don't have any real support. So if an enemy does decide to target Lady Guinevere, she's kind of out on an island, out on her own. So being able to activate this and protect her vitality would actually be very useful. So you could definitely consider picking this up, but I have not picked this up and I haven't really regretted it. Next up is Frost Armor, which is again all about trying to make her more tanky. Melee attackers are going to suffer damage equal to 10% of the hero's weapon damage, and her armor is going to increase by 2. As far as upgrades, you can reduce all vitality damage by 25%, which is huge. Holy smokes, that's definitely beneficial. You're going to get a +3 Unbreakable Armor against ranged attacks. So armor reduces the amount of damage that you take, but enemies will break armor over time until they can finally get basically clean hits against your hit points before finally taking out your vitality. Unbreakable armor means that enemies cannot break it, so whatever damage mitigation that armor is doing, it's permanent and there's no way for enemies to just be able to get past it. So basically, this upgrade means that 3 armors will be able to mitigate damage against ranged attacks at all times, which definitely makes her more sturdy. You can increase the amount of damage melee attackers take against her by 10%, so it's going to go up to 20%. And then finally, you can reduce armor loss by 25%. So all of this together obviously makes her much, much more tanky, and it's really, really nice. But again, I don't focus on tankiness. I focus on her support and her being able to do damage against outsized enemies. So your mileage may vary about whether or not this is worth taking. Next up, we have Teleport, which is going to allow her to go to a targeted position. You can reduce the AP cost by 1. You can make it where she's going to be healed as far as HP when she casts Teleport. She can be hidden once she comes to a particular tile using Teleport. And you can increase the range of Teleport. I absolutely recommend that you go ahead and get this. Even though Lady Guinevere is melee, she's not as sturdy, especially not as much as Sir Mordred. And even the champions that you get, I feel like they're more sturdy than she is. So you don't want enemies just ganging up on her. But at the same time, she needs to be in melee range to do any sort of real damage. Basically, what usually happens is I use her support powers on the first turn. She kind of just chills for the first turn. Then, once the second turn starts, usually the enemy's front line has come up and they're attacking Sir Mordred and whoever is serving as my champion at that particular time. So then she can teleport to the back line where archers and spellcasters are and basically cut them up while the majority of the focus is on Sir Mordred. And so teleport allows her to be able to do that very, very effectively. Enchanted Weapon allows her to do 10% more weapon damage. Obviously, this is useful. And then Unburden. When the hero's HP drops to 0, all cooldowns are reduced by 2 turns. You should not be planning around all of her HP dropping to 0. You should be using her in a way where this does not occur. Real quick, before we move on to the last panel, if you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate you hitting the like button. It helps me figure out what content the channel is enjoying and helps spread my videos to more people. I really appreciate all of your support. Alright, so now we're on the last tile. First up is Ice Wall. Creates a 3-tile long ice wall for 3 turns. Each tile of Ice Wall counts as half cover and has vitality equal to 100% of the hero's maximum vitality. You can upgrade this, where it's going to gain an additional 25% vitality. The range can be increased by 2 tiles. When Ice Wall tile is destroyed, all adjacent units are frozen for 1 turn. And you can increase the length by 2 as well. So basically, it's something you have to use tactically to try to block off enemies. I personally don't bother with this. I'd much rather just run in and cut enemies up. But the fact that it will freeze all enemies when destroyed is actually really, really useful. Frozen enemies can't do anything. So your mileage may vary about how useful this actually is. I skipped it. Soothing Words restores 4 HP to the hero and each ally after each encounter. Monster skill. Absolutely monster skill. Again, hit points is what protects your vitality, and hit points recharge after every mission. So if you're able to keep your hit points topped off, it essentially ensures you will never need the cathedral and you will never need to go to the hospital. So her having a way to ensure that after every single fight, your allies are going to get a little bit of HP healing is a tremendous help to everybody on the team. And there's an upgrade that's going to increase the HP healing by an additional 2. You can also make it where they're going to regain vitality when choosing the HP recovery resting action, which isn't that useful, honestly. And that they'll regain 10% HP when choosing the HP recovering resting action. This is actually useful. A lot of times when you choose that HP recovery action, it's because you have multiple members on your team who have lost HP, and more than likely they've lost a lot of HP. So this could definitely be useful to you. And then finally, the hero and each ally regain 2 armor when choosing the Armorsmith Kit resting action. So this is somewhat useful. Using the Armorsmith kit resting action already restores quite a bit of armor, but especially for your tanks or other characters who have a lot of armor for their character, it might not restore all your slots. So this is going to help to ensure that most, if not all, of your slots are restored. So I think you could safely skip this, but at the same time, it's not necessarily a bad investment. Next up is Scout, which is going to give Lady Guinevere 1 movement AP. So essentially it's an AP point that is specifically used for movement and +1 perception. At this stage of the game, more than likely you're using somebody else to handle your perception. So I definitely feel like that's not useful for her. And she doesn't really need that +1 movement AP. Again, that teleport option only has a cooldown of 2 turns, and I think she has some way of reducing cooldown. So, frankly, every turn, every other turn, she's going to be using teleport. The movement AP, not all that great. Ray of Light causes a target to suffer 25% weapon damage and it's blinded for 1 turn. Blinded targets have an 80% miss chance. This is obviously a powerful debuff, but I didn't pick it up because it only works on 1 person. And so I didn't feel like that was all that useful. I mean, sometimes you'll be in a fight where there's one particular melee-oriented character who you really, really wish you could blind. But for the most part, it's a whole bunch of enemies that you're worried about. And being able to blind just one of them isn't all that helpful. As far as upgrades, you can increase the weapon damage, you can reduce the AP cost, you can increase the effect by 1 turn, but that increases the cooldown as well, and the range can be increased by 1 tile. So obviously, if you pick these up, pick this ability up, the upgrades are useful, but frankly, I felt like all of this you could safely ignore. Wish of Death, the hero gains 1 AP when an enemy unit dies. Definitely worth picking this up. Enemies should be dying left and right every single turn. Mysticism, killing a unit reduces all cooldowns by 1 turn, once per turn, and it gives you a +1 spellcraft. Definitely want to pick this up. Again, I'm focusing on those weaker, easy to chop down units, so her cooldowns will be decreasing all the time once I'm able to pick this up. Divine, regain 14 HP when HP drops to 0, can only activate once per encounter. Again, you should not be counting on your HP dropping to 0. That's a very, very bad situation for your character. So I don't see the point in investing in talents geared around that particular situation. And that is the full list of abilities for Lady Guinevere. She is my favorite sage in the game and a mainstay on my team, and someone I feel like is very powerful when used properly. Hope all of you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a like, share this content, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will see you all in the next video. Take care.